Okay. A good afternoon to one and all present here. So, today we would be starting with a subject called as Indian Constitution. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Professor Apeksha Gupte. A little bit about myself. I've completed BBA, MBA, and LLB. Currently, I am pursuing PhD. This semester, I would be taking a subject for you all called as Indian Constitution. As a citizen of India, you should be aware of the basic laws and get accustomed accordingly. So in our today's class, it is just an introductory class, students. We are going to understand the course structure and the syllabus for the entire semester. From our next class, we will start with official beginning of the syllabus. Okay, so let's start with the introductory part. Let's discuss something about the course structure. Students, the course code is AECC, which means that it is an ability enhancement compulsory code which is prescribed by the university for all the students. It is a compulsory subject, and the title of the subject is Indian Constitution. In short, you all can call it as IC. That is, IC stands for Indian Constitution. The teaching hours per week is just 2. So you have 2 classes in a particular week, and the credit given by the university for this course is 2 credit. That means you have to understand that it is not 100 marks paper, but it is a 50 marks paper. So let's understand the distribution of the marks for this entire semester. Students, first, it is completely a theoretical subject and not a practical oriented subject. The paper is completely descriptive in nature, and very importantly, you have to understand that it is a 50 marks paper. So the division is as follows. The theoretical paper conducted by the university at the end of the examination or at the end of the semester would be of 40 marks. The internal assessment, that is called in short as IA, would be for 10 marks, and totally the summing of all these 3 gives you 50 marks. So kindly understand that it is a 50 marks paper. Next, let's discuss the question paper pattern, which is very, very important. Students, there will be 2 sections in your question paper. that is part 1 and part 2. There are only two sections, 1 and 2. In part 1, there will be totally 6 questions carrying 2 marks each, wherein you have to answer only 4 out of 6. That is, they'll be just of 2 marks and there will be 6 questions. In that, you have to answer only 4. Part 2, there will be 4 questions, but those 4 questions will carry 16 marks each. But you have to answer only 2 questions out of 4. Please understand that once more I will repeat. There are 2 sections, section A and section B. In section A, you will have 6 questions carrying 2 marks each, small questions, wherein you have to answer only 4. In part 2, you'll be having 4 questions carrying 16 marks each, big line answers, wherein out of 4, you have to answer only 2. So, in part 1, 4 questions of 2 marks, that is 8 marks, and part 2, 2 questions of 16 marks, that is 32 marks. So 32 plus 8, you have totally 40 marks. I hope this is clear for you all. Next, we shall move to the objective of introducing this subject to your course. That is, why the university has prescribed this subject with a particular motive. Now here, the motive is the Constitution of India aims to imbue students with the constitutional making process and its formulations. So students, the subject has been introduced with the intention that you all should understand what are the basics and the fundamental laws of a country, and to acquaint the students with the basic understanding of the constitution, which is very, very important. As a citizen of India, you should be aware of the basic laws, and you also have to abide by those laws. Just understanding is not enough. So, as a citizen, you should be proactive in maintaining law order of the country. And hence, with such a intention, the university has made this subject a compulsory subject to all the students. Next, students, since it is a 50 marks paper, you will have only 3 units in this entire semester. If you had a 100 marks paper, you have 5 units. But since this subject is carrying 50 marks, you are having only 3 units to be completed. So the title of all these 3 units we will study independently, but just the title of every unit we are going to understand. Okay? The first unit speaks about constitution, in that the structure and the principles. So here you have to understand that this, sorry, just 1 minute. Okay. So in this unit, we are going to understand what is the meaning of constitution, how is it being formulated, What was the making of the constitution? The sources of constitution? What is its structure? The principles, etc. So you will have just the introductory part, wherein one more important thing, we are going to study the preamble of our country, which is very important. As a citizen, you should know what is our preamble. If someone asks you, even at midnight, you should be able to understand and tell clearly the preamble of our country. Then you're said to be a true citizen of our country. No doubt, we will learn in detail what is the preamble, why was it being framed, and what is the real meaning of it. Okay. In Unit 2, we are going to study what are the fundamental rights and directive principles. So, I hope you all have seen a coin. Okay. So there are two faces of a coin. One face is about the rights. At the second phase, when there are rights indulged, at the same time you have duties along with it. So here we are going to understand as a citizen what rights and duties an individual has towards the government. Most of you must be already knowing what are the basic rights. Example, right to equality, right to personal liberty. You all must be even using these terminologies, but you all are not accustomed accordingly when and where to use. What are fundamental rights? What are fundamental duties? You must be not knowing. So in this unit, we are going to study what are the basic fundamental rights, what are the basic fundamental duties and principles of the directive principles as a citizen of a country. Next, the last unit speaks about the government of union. It is very interesting. Here you're going to cover every little thing about the prime minister, the president of the country, etc. So each content we will understand it today in a detail, and from the next class we are going to start with our first unit. So we'll move to the first unit. The first unit speaks about constitution. Students, we are going to understand the contents of each unit. In the first unit, we are going to speak about structure and principles. Means we are going to understand what is the meaning of the term constitution, what does constitution mean, and why is constitution so very important to our country? Why is it called as a basic law or a fundamental law of the country? Next, we are going to study making of the Indian Constitution, which in short is also called as sources of Indian Constitution. You must be aware of when as an Indian national we were subjective to freedom and when did we get independence. At least this basic year you must be knowing. So if you don't know also, don't worry, at this is the high time you should be knowing it. Okay, so here we are going to understand how was the Indian Constitution being framed, how was it being formulated, what were the different sources of Indian Constitution. Okay, and the last part speaks about the silent features of Indian Constitution. So we are going to study the silent features of Indian Constitution in detail. There are about 18 to 20 points. Each feature we are going to speak in detail. So this is not a huge unit, a small unit to be completed, wherein you have only three things to be learned: meaning and importance of constitution, making of Indian constitution. You can either call it as sources. In your question paper, they may ask you what is the formulation, framework. There are different terminologies attached with it. And the last one is silent features of Indian constitution. Okay. In the next unit, we are going to study the fundamental rights and fundamental duties. I already told you that when you have rights on one hand, at the same time, on the other hand, an individual has duties. When you demand for rights, automatically you have a duty attached with it. So here we are going to study which are very important fundamental rights, very interesting unit, and directive principles. In your common language also, sometimes you may be using, oh, I have a right to equality, okay, I have a right to life, etc. and etc. Okay, so different important rights. I doubt how much you speak about your duties, but surely when you have rights, you have duties along with it. So later, the last part speaks about directive principles. So, to make a clear understanding, I would also teach you all the difference between fundamental rights with that of fundamental duties, and then how are fundamental rights and duties different from that of directive principles. So even this distinction I will teach you all for a better understanding. So this unit would cover basically the rights, duties, and directive principles. Then let's move to the last unit. The last unit speaks about Unit 3, which speaks about the government of India. So here we are going to understand in Unit 3 about the President of India. Now, I won't say that, I won't teach you all who is the President of India. In your degree, you should at least have this basic knowledge. I expect you all to have at least this basic knowledge to understand who is the President of India. In this unit, we are going to study the electrons, or you can say that what are the basic parts of a President of India? Why President of India is needed for working or running of a government or governmental authorities. We are going to also learn about PM, that is Prime Minister. And along with PM, you have Council of Ministers, different ministers. So you're going to understand about the Prime Minister, tenure of service. Tenure is, you can say that as, you can call it as length of service. And when I speak about Prime Ministers, you have also the Council of Ministers working hand in hand with them. And the last part of the unit, the two houses, that is upper house and lower house. You must be aware about Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. The composition, how is it framed? How many members are there? What are their rights? What are their duties? What are their powers, etc. All this we're going to cover in this unit. Same goes with that of Rajya Sabha. Here also we are going to understand What are the composition? What are the powers? What are maybe the tenure of services? How many members are there, etc. So this unit would be covering all of this. So once more, I would like to repeat that students, it is a 50 marks paper wherein unlike other papers or other subjects, you do not have 5 units, you have 3 units to be completed, wherein first unit speaks about the introduction of the constitution, the second unit speaks about the fundamental rights and directive principles, and the third unit speaks about the government of India. For the students who have come late, just a glimpse of the question paper pattern. You have the subject carrying for 50 marks, wherein the division is 40 and 10. That is 40 marks according to the examination conducted at the end of the semester, and 10 marks for your internal assessment examination, wherein you will have two divisions, part 1 and part 2. Students, in part 1, you will have 6 questions carrying 2 marks each. And in the second section, you will have 4 questions carrying 16 marks each. But you have to answer only 2. So remember, you have 2 sections. Section 1, section 2. You will have 6 questions carrying 2 marks. You have to answer only 4. Second section, you have 4 questions wherein you have to answer only 2, but it will be of 16 marks each. So 4 questions which you have to answer, they will be of 2 marks. That adds up to 8 marks. And part 2, you have to answer only 2 questions carrying 16 marks. That adds up to 32 marks. So totally, your paper would be carrying 40 marks altogether. Okay? You have 3 units and the contents also are discussed. In our next classes, we have to begin with the first unit, which speaks about the Constitution. So in our today's class, we spoke about the course structure, the credit prescribed by the university. It is a 2-credit examination, wherein the total distribution of marks, wherein the examination would be conducted for 40 marks, internal assessment for 10 marks, and totally it would be carrying 50 marks. I spoke about the question paper pattern. I won't repeat it again. And I also spoke about the objective of the university to prescribe this subject. The syllabus of the subject, it carries 3 units. And I also spoke about the contents of the subject. Okay. In our next class, we would be starting with unit 1. I would just record attendance. Please give me some time. If you have any query, you can drop a message in the chat box so that I clearly understand whatever queries you have, and be free to ask any doubts. We'll have an interactive session and you can ask if you don't understand anything. Okay, I would keep the chat box open so that you'll understand and post if you're having any queries. With this, I would end today's class. It was a small class with short timings, just for your introduction of your course structure and the syllabus and contents of it. In the next class, we shall take a grip over subject. Okay? With this, I end my today's class. I'll just go through if any chat box, anything, if you all have posted. If no, okay. Thank you. Have a good day.